hear, just standing on the bank, I could hear rocks underwater, all these rocks clunking together because these turtles are very large. They're almost the size of my car, which I have a Volkswagen GTI. And one of those big turtles are extremely strong. And it could have been just kind of plowing through the rocks looking for food or whatever, but I could hear the rocks clunking and banging underwater, but I couldn't actually see the turtle. But certain times of the year or certain years, that river almost dries up, but then other years it's almost reaches the bridges, so it varies wildly from year to year.
Yes, that's
So
why I think that that it would be a good idea to go there and to interview people, because you said that the locals know that there is no monster in the river. So maybe this is something that was made up by tourists. Maybe this is something that was made up by journalists or something like that, who just wanted to create a story to pull more people in. Maybe they have a problem with their tourism there. So that's why I think that it would be really cool if you two would drive there and would ask people, what is this really about? Do you believe in this monster?
yeah, we could do that, but I'm afraid a lot of these people would look at us like we had three eyes or something, like what? Because there's a lot of people go fishing on that river a lot. And I was telling Nate that some years ago, there's a catfish native to North America, but it's native to the Mississippi Basin, called a flathead catfish. Now, it doesn't get as big as the Wales catfish from Europe, but it's still a very big catfish. And it has been introduced into the Altamaha. I guess some fishermen took it down there. And now the game department says that everyone you catch, to not release it, to kill it, or throw it on the bank or whatever, because they don't want it in there because it's eating all the other fish. But it's a very big catfish.
Oh, I'll show
And
you big catfish.
now I know the Wales
Is that a
catfish.
euphemism? Jesus Christ, Ligeia, keep it under control.
No, it's no sexual innuendo. I actually have a giant catfish picture.
Oh, okay.
Well, now the Wales catfish, I'm well aware of it because I've actually got some in a tank right here in my basement that I'm raising up.
Oh, you don't have these.
But they get up like 14 feet long, and they live in the
Ooh.
Danube in several areas in Europe, and they're just monster catfish. And why these things have never been deemed a man-eater is beyond me, because I've seen these things eat other fish half their length.
Yes,
I mean,
well, I will explain in the video because that is part of the theories about Nessie. And I will show the picture, but I mean, I've shown it to Luther, so you know the size of them. I wasn't sure whether you still remember, but it's shocking, and it has something to do with them living in rivers or ponds. So they don't grow that big when they're living in a river.
yeah. And they've been introduced into the Ebo River in Spain. And for some reason, they don't know if it's because Spain has a warmer climate than, say, Germany or whatever, but the ones in the Ebo River are growing much larger. And then they have some of them in the cooling ponds at Chernobyl that are gigantic, but they're saying, oh, they're mutant catfish from the radiation from Chernobyl. And it's like, no, it's just because there's no fishing allowed there because of the radiation, so they're allowed to grow to their maximum length undisturbed.
Yes, and I have pictures of them. So we will look into that, and I'm looking forward to seeing Nate's face later on in the video when it's published. Because they're gigantic.
I'll kick us off then. What
Okay.
have you got for us today, Ligeia?
The first of our prehistoric cryptid videos. There will be more.
Ooh, do tell.
Yes, so we'll start with 3 cryptids. There are more than 3 cryptids in the video, so I will mention some that also exist. But
Okay.
the main cryptids are the 3 big ones. And we will start in North America, in Canada and Alaska, with a dog-like cryptid. And I will show you pictures. Let me see. This is the Waheela.
It's kind of like a bear with a super long tail.
Right, and as you can see, it's a giant thing. So the Waheela is a giant wolf-like animal because it has a long tail. Bears don't have that long tail, and it's kind of like a mixture between a bear and a wolf. It's usually described as being white. So they often say it looks like a cross between a polar wolf and a polar bear. It has very large paws. Its front legs are longer than the back legs, as you can see in the picture. You see that? Yeah, the back legs are kind of stubby, or they just melt into the body. They do not live in packs like wolves. They're pretty solitary. So you could say, oh, maybe it's just a polar bear with a longer tail. But the Inuit call it an evil spirit that kills humans. So it has a supernatural component. And there is a creator on YouTube, his name is Hammerson Peters, who makes videos about the Nahanni Valley, for example. He's Canadian, and he has these videos about Canadian legends. And I've watched a couple of his videos. Some of them are really, really good, and he has videos simply just about the Waheela. And he says there is this legend from the 19th century that there is somewhere a tropical valley in Canada, like in northern Canada no less. And it's tropical because they have hot springs, so they warm up everything, and that is why they have tropical vegetation in a secluded valley that is surrounded by snow and ice. And there you have these cryptids. So he also talks about mammoths, for example, that allegedly live there. And he cites reports about Canada and people going on mammoth hunts. So these were actual newspaper articles in the 19th and early 20th century where people claimed that they had been to Canada and had hunted mammoths. And they brought home mammoth tusks, but they were not of living animals. So they just found mammoths that were very well preserved. As you know from Russia and Alaska, for example, there is this legend that there are restaurants that are selling you mammoth steaks and they're claiming it's beef, but it's actually from dead frozen mammoths and it's 10,000 years old.
I'd try it.
Yes, you need to try everything. I would too. Um, so this is a legend of the region that there are isolated pockets of land where these cryptids still live, and they're essentially just normal prehistoric animals that have survived in these hidden valleys, and Nahanni Valley is one of these. So it's a dangerous place. It's related to a tribe of humanoids, and I'm not saying humans because they're not actually human, they're just similar to us. They're giant hairy creatures that cut off people's heads. So you may not want to go there.
Yeah, I'll avoid that.
Okay.
I'm buying a ticket right now.
Expedition Luther.
No, look at this. Look at this.
Oh.
This is some art showing what a Waheela looks like when it's attacking. And you can tell it's similar to a cross between a polar bear and an Arctic wolf.
Yeah, I really see it. I really see it.
What if I told
Okay.
you that this creature might be real?
Now, knowing zoology like I do, there is probably an explanation for that. Is if you look at the great panda, it looks like a bear, which they say is not related to the bear, but yet both animals belong to the same genus of Pygocentridae. But they have the lesser panda or the red panda, which does have a tail.
That's
But
true.
it's also a panda. So it's like this could be a cousin to the bear that does have a tail that hasn't been discovered yet. But what a lot of people don't know, back in the 70s, they had a fish called the snail darter that held up the construction of the Tellico Dam for years, and the U.S. government passed a law that you can no longer discover new animals, because if you discover a new rare animal, it could inhibit development. So even if this thing exists, the government has a law that you can't say that it does.
Okay.
That's
weird.
weird.
Well,
Huh.
it's money.
Oh well,
Because it's little.
that explains it.
So it could be a bear relative with a tail, and it could be exist, but the American government will never admit that it does, because all of a sudden that will cut them off from, going in and doing shale fracking or whatever, because it's invading its habitat or whatever, and they don't want that to happen. So they just say it doesn't exist when it could.
Okay, that's an
Wow.
interesting theory. So, Ligeia, do you want to hit us with the truth?
Let me talk a little bit about possibilities, because we will do that for the cryptids today. We will go into certain theories about them, and there is another giant bear wolf thing in eastern Greenland. And of course, I've prepared this, so you can see it's very, very big. It's not white, and it looks more wolf-like. This is called the Amarok. So in eastern Greenland, the Inuit living there, they call it the Amarok, and they say it's a monstrous wolf. That is not just a wolf that has some bear-like traits too. But in Western Greenland and in North America, they also have this word Amarok, and they just use it for very big wolves. So you have these cryptids between Alaska and Eastern Greenland, which is like a huge area. But not everyone has the same opinion about them. And that's why we'll go into wolves now. So we'll look at some really big wolves.
Awesome.
For example, there is an Arctic wolf. So that is from North America. And as you can see, that is already pretty big compared to that woman. There are size comparison of wolves.
Oh, that's a
So
handy
these
one.
are all living wolves. There are different subspecies of wolf. You have very, very small ones. They usually live in warmer countries. For example, you have Indian wolves and Arabian wolves, Ethiopian wolves, and Mexican wolves, and so on. They're all on the smaller side. And as you can see here, the biggest wolves are the Mackenzie Valley wolves. That's the dark red one here. And second would actually be the Yukon wolf, that is also called the northwestern wolf. So you can see that there are differences, and some of these wolves in North America, they're very, very big, and they have to be because these wolves hunt bison. Or would you like to call it buffalo? What is the correct word for it in American English?
Mr. Luther.
Are you asking me or what?
Yes, you're you're the expert here.
Here in America, we normally refer them to as buffalo.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Bison is the meat, right?
Correct. There used to be a restaurant called Ted Turner, who owned a lot of TV stations. He now owns a bunch of restaurants where he serves, when you go in there, he has buffalo burgers. And they're very good, by the way.
Nice. Yes, it's a bit leaner than beef. So you see the size comparison here. It could just be a big wolf, like the Inuits say, like many Inuits say. And that would be Mackenzie wolf then. So there's another comparison. That is the biggest wolf that exists. So not the individual, but the type of wolf. You can see that its skull is about 2 times the size of the guy's skull.
Still looks like a happy boy, though.
Yes. You could probably ride that into battle.
Oh, honestly, that's like a dream, right? I'd be like the monkey police then.
Nate the macaque. Okay, so yes, there are really, really big wolves out there, and I mean it looks quite fluffy, so maybe they just confused it with a big wolf. Even when you look at Eurasian wolves, in well, not so much in Europe anymore because they've been hunted to near extinction here, but in northern Asia and Russia, you still have Eurasian wolves, and they're about that size too.
Mm.
Yeah, so this is a Eurasian wolf, and they are not that heavy. They're about 50 kilograms, but they're about 90 centimeters tall to the shoulder. So that is almost as tall as a Great Dane. And they're about 1 meter 40 long.
Wow.
And even the Mackenzie wolf isn't much taller, but it's heavier. So it's up to 61 kilograms. And it can be around 1 meter 80 long. Some are longer than 2 meters. So that would be a 7-foot long wolf for Luther. And about 3 feet high to the shoulder.
It's fair size, all right.
So yes, well, you see that the Eurasian wolf has a much narrower face. It's
Like
not
Wile
that
E. Coyote,
fluffy.
yeah.
Yeah. But that was an idea people had. So they thought, oh, maybe it's just a big wolf. And I'll give you another comparison. This is a Yukon wolf or Alaskan wolf or Northwestern wolf in comparison to a Labrador.
Yeah.
That's just the average size for that type of wolf.
Right.
And another idea people had, because these Waheelas are not described as very, very wolf-like, they're described as a cross between wolf and bear, is that it might be a dire wolf. And we're not talking about the dire wolves in Game of Thrones here, because those are made up dire wolves.
That's right. Those ones are real.
They were. We're going with a map first. So this is the area where they used to live. It's an American phenomenon, although allegedly there are some bones that have been found in East Asia, in China mostly. So that would be a giant American wolf, and it doesn't belong to the same species as our modern. So they could not crossbreed, for example. And it wasn't that much bigger than these wolves that we've seen here. It's about 1 meter 80 long, so that would be about 6 feet long. And it's about a meter tall, which is not that much taller than the Eurasian wolf and the Mackenzie wolf that we've seen. We don't exactly know how heavy it was, and it has been extinct for almost 10,000 years. But there could be pockets of those still alive, and we will talk about the dire wolf in a different video, so we will give them some more space. It's one of the candidates that are suspected of being the Waheela. And I'll show you another size comparison. So timber wolf is also a very tall wolf species from North America, and as you can see, the dire wolf is a bit taller.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You just had to bring up wolves, didn't you?
I had to, sorry. Okay.
Nate may not know this, but I recently had a drama all through the summer where I had a Yukon black wolf that the state was going to euthanize.
Holy cow, really?
And the girl at the pound, she snuck the wolf out and gave it to me and told me to take it and run. So I had him for a while, but I had to get him out of state because in the state of Georgia, wolves are automatically put down no matter what. And he was a monster. He was jet black. There's a subspecies they call the Yukon black, but he was super intelligent and he slept with me.
Oh.
And getting rid of him would just tore me up.
Sorry to hear that, buddy.
Yeah. So
That was
I'll
some
shut it.
room.
I'll shut it.
So now we'll come to the most likely candidate. Could have been a big wolf, could have been a misidentified polar bear, could have been a surviving dire wolf. We don't know that. But the most likely candidate that actually fits the description, fits the size, and the general physical description of the Waheela is the amphibian. And you've probably never seen one.
I don't think I've even heard the name.
So I'll start with a size comparison.
Whoa.
Right, it's basically a polar bear with a long tail. And as you can see, it's much more bear-like than a wolf would be, and even a big fluffy wolf would be, and even the dire wolf would be. So the amphibian is a very ancient animal. They were among the first predator species, and I mean, they were so diverse because of that, because there were essentially no other predators around at the time when they started out. So this is one example of an amphibian, but they have different sizes, they have different weights. So there are small ones that only weigh 5 kilograms. There are some that weigh 100, and there are some that weigh around 750 kilograms. And I'll give you an overview over the different amphibian variants. So not all of them are super giant. You can see that some really look like raccoons or a little
Yeah.
bit.
Oh my goodness.
But of course, there is Amphibian giganteus. That is one of the big ones. And a normal sized giganteus would weigh between 300 and 400 kilograms. They had giants that weighed up to 750 or 775 kilograms, so almost a metric ton. Size wise, they were very close to a polar bear. They were basically the tenrecs of their time, and I will show you what a tenrec is, because I'm sure that you've never heard that either.
I thought you were mispronouncing T-Rex.
No. Okay, let me see. There are tenrecs, but I'll show you just one.
Oh my
That's
god.
cute, right? Okay, so what I said about the amphibian is that at his time there were so little predators around that it's basically one species, and I think they have around 34 subspecies. So they were extremely diverse because they had to replace dogs, cats, hyenas, bears, and so on. They took all of these biological niches. So basically, that was a predator where every size and every shape belonged to the same species.
That's
They
wow.
Yes, they occupied the whole predator field. And later on, animals like wolves and big cats and so on came into the mix. So amphibians didn't actually have to be that diverse anymore. And it was speculated that they might be the ancestor of wolves and bears. So there you have your wolf bear or bear wolf. But that's probably not true. So from what I've read, they are a separate group, but they really look kind of like wolves and bears combined. And they developed from animals that were more wolf-like towards animals that were more bear-like. First, they ran on their toes, and later on, they ran on their soles like bears do. So dogs run on their toes, wolves do that, and bears run on the soles of their feet. So the tenrec of Madagascar, and I'll show you the map, the tenrec works in a similar way because they are extremely diverse. So this is only one type of tenrec, but there are tenrecs that look like hedgehogs, and you would not be able to tell the difference. It is one species of animal that occupies lots of biological niches. So some of them have to look like shrews, and some have to look like hedgehogs, because that is their biological function. And I'll show you the other ones. So first of all, let's have a look at the tenrec that looks like a hedgehog.
Oh my god, yeah, it does look exactly like a hedgehog.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So if that
No.
thing ran across the street in front of you,
You just think hedgehog, 100%.
yeah. And there's an overview. So these are tenrec species that exist now. And as you can see, they don't look very much alike.
No.
One even looks like a weasel or an otter.
Yeah, it kind of does. Oh my god.
So this is all the same animal. There are some more pictures. Same species, but they're extremely diverse because of their occupation. And the same thing happened in the Galapagos Islands. There is Galapagos. It belongs to the South American country of Ecuador. And this was drawn by someone you probably know.
Are we going to say?
Charles.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Darwin.
So these are the Galapagos finches, and Darwin realized that they all look very much alike, but they have differently formed beaks. So he theorized that they are all descendants of the same species that specialized into different ecological niches.
Right, depending on how they evolve and what their needs and wants and stuff like that
Right.
is. I get it.
That is the same situation with the amphibian. So you have one species and you have lots of different things to do. So the amphibian, the basic amphibian, specializes and takes different ecological niches. That is what the tenrecs did. That is what the Galapagos finches did. So this is something that happens in nature. This is pretty normal.
Mm.
And we need to look at the big amphibian. I just wanted to show you that there are many different kinds of amphibian.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool.
This is the amphibian range.
Whoa.
They existed in North America. There is also a small pocket of amphibian in Africa.
Mm.
And they existed all over Europe and Eurasia. The Eurasian amphibians, they were more focused on meat. So they were carnivores for the most part. And the American ones, they're more like omnivores. So they also would eat plants, which is a behavior that also exists among bears, at least among bears that are not polar bears, because polar bears only eat meat.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really have much choice, do they?
Right. And as you can see by comparing the maps here, the Nahanni Valley is in Canada and it's close to the Alaskan border.
Mhm.
So this would be the valley where the Waheela lives and where people allegedly saw these amphibian-like animals. And it's very remote, it's very secluded. But as you can tell from the map that I showed you before, the world map, there is actually no amphibian on the border to Alaska.
Yeah.
So they did not exist there. But it could be that we simply didn't find any bones there yet. That is always a possibility that nobody went up there and dug because, it's permafrost and it's probably difficult to dig deep enough to find bones.
I can see that.
Yeah, so the bones that we have from North America are from different US states like Nebraska, Oregon, Colorado, California, Delaware, Florida, and New Mexico. There are none in Canada, as far as I know, and there are none in Alaska. But this would have been the range of the Waheela.
Hmm.
So we can't say 100% that the Waheela is the amphibian. I think it's a good theory.
I definitely think it's a good theory. I mean, I suppose it's not impossible for just a random little pocket of them to have made their way even further north. I suppose it's not impossible.
Right. Exactly. And this is what artists made of this theory that the Waheela is really the amphibian. So this picture of a Waheela that looks very much like they were actually drawing a bear dog.
Mm.
So yeah, it's possible that this cryptid, this Waheela of North America, is in reality a surviving prehistoric animal, and it could be an amphibian.
I mean, that sounds like the most sound logic to me.
Because everything matches. For example, when you compare the Waheela to dire wolves are known for having very tiny paws, and the amphibian is known for having giant bear paws.
Mm.
So the Waheela does have big paws, which means it's probably not a dire wolf.
Yeah, I mean, plus even just appearance wise, that just a little bit more like an amphibian. I mean, the fact a long tail on a bear like creature. That's just kind of the biggest part, you know. Oh, that's how you spell it.
Yes,
Good.
right. No, I'll write everything down for you. So
I
I know
appreciate
that
that.
it's difficult with these Latin and Greek words and all the scientific stuff. So yeah, I'll write everything down. Good. Do you want to say anything to that, Luther?
Uh, the only thing I was going to say is yes, out west, unlike the East Coast, there are huge undeveloped tracts of land out there where there could be things lurking, and especially if they're nocturnal, that nobody would ever see them. And the few people that did see them, nobody would believe them anyway. Because,
Yeah.
as an example, on the East Coast here, we had what was called the ivory-billed woodpecker, and they declared it extinct like in the 30s or 40s. But reports kept coming in that they were seeing ivory-billed woodpeckers. Well, I know my birds because I'm into biology also, and there's a smaller relative of it called the pileated woodpecker. But up in North Georgia, I saw several of the ivory-billed woodpeckers up close. I mean, they flew up and landed on the side of a tree right in front of my grandmother's house. And these things are like the size of a raven or something. They're huge. Well, they kept denying that these things existed, that everybody was mistaken the pileated for the ivory-billed. But now they have finally admitted that yes, they are still alive after 70 or 80 years. So a lot of this stuff can go under the radar. So unlike the East Coast, which is really developed and has a lot of roads and subdivisions, out west, there are huge tracts of land that you can Google map down on that there is miles between any road where there could easily be something lurking out there and not be seen, especially if it's coming out at night. Unless it just walks right out in front of a truck, you would never see it.
Yeah.
So
No,
would you be
I agree.
worried to would you be worried to run into an amphibian in the western United States or northwestern United States?
I don't know because I take people's word with a grain of salt when they say something is dangerous because I've been told alligators are dangerous, yet I petted many of alligator. They say wolves are dangerous, yet there's no recorded killings of anybody in the states of wolves. And I had one for a pet that he was like my friend. And I've got pictures if you need to see them of me holding venomous snakes, and I'm not holding them behind the head. I'm holding them where if they wanted to, they could bite me, but they didn't. So, but a lot of people are horrified of those types of animals. So people may be scared of those animals, but unless I observe them myself, I can't say whether they're dangerous or not. So that's one of those things I can't say whether I'd be afraid or not because I've never actually seen one. But if it started growling and snarling and coming after me, then yes, I would get up the nearest tree as fast as I could. But if it just went walking around looking at me or went running off, then obviously it's a shy animal, and you don't really have to worry about it. Just because it's big and scary doesn't mean it's dangerous. So I don't really know what to think about that. Because what people say about it and what it really is two different things.
Okay. Good. Then let's progress to northern Eurasia. We'll continue with the Russian unicorn that is called the Indrik beast.
Ooh.
Sometimes it has two horns,
Yeah, I was
but
just about
often
to
it
say.
Yes, and I'll explain why. And it's not really horse-like. It looks like a giant bull. And the description is that it's a giant bull with the legs of a deer and the head of a horse and a horn on its snout.
Sounds a little
Okay.
bit more like a rhino, I would think, based on the description.
Right. You've already solved it.
Hey. I'm learning.
These are more. Yes, you're evolving.
Well, I
I'm
think she had sent me the pictures of some cave. I think it was in France or somewhere. It was these ancient cave drawings where Eurasia used to have their version of a rhino compared to the African rhino. And that may have started as the population was dying out and they were getting rare, that this large animal, because you've heard of people call the hippo the water horse,
yeah.
but it doesn't really look like a horse. But
God,
a
no.
rhino could have been just, they used the term horse, but it had one horn on its nose, and they started the theory of unicorn when it was actually a rhino. But now they're extinct as far as we know. So
Debatable whether this started the unicorn stories, and we can go into that when we're talking about the unicorn. But now we're talking about the Indrik beast. So you're absolutely correct. This is supposed to be a rhino, and we have an animal that appeared in a BBC documentary. And first they called it first they called it Indricotherium. The Indricotherium is a North Asian animal compared to an African elephant here, as you can see.
That,
Now
was
they
that
call it.
real?
That was real.
Oh my
So
god. It's like a messed up giraffe.
right, but it's related to rhinos. It just doesn't have a horn.
Oh, it's so weird.
You can tell by the little ears because the ears are very much like those of a rhino. So they found parts of it in Mongolia and in China, and they brought bones home in the 1920s, I think. And then these bones were just forgotten in the basement of a museum. And at one point, somebody found one of these bones that was as tall as a man. And that was just the thigh bone of that thing. And they started looking into it. So I think I've already sent you the picture of the skull because that would make a cool thumbnail.
Oh my god.
That is an Indricotherium skull, and now they call it Paraceratherium, which is more complicated, but there is still a subspecies that retains the name of Indricotherium. So the Russian Indrik beast and the Indricotherium, they're not necessarily closely related, but both are rhinos. One of them just doesn't have a horn. I can give you some data on this. So the Indricotherium lived between 34 and 23 million years ago, very, very long ago. The name essentially means hornless beast. And it was about 5 meters tall and around 7.5 meters long. And it weighed between 15 and 20 tons.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I
wow.
had no idea.
So they took the name of the Indrik beast to describe that. And the actual Indrik beast lived much closer to our time. It lived around 17,000 to 9,800 years ago. So there is a realistic chance that people could have run into this. And it's a northern woolly rhino.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
There have been ice mummies of these rhinos. They're extremely well preserved. They look like you could actually cut something out of them and eat it.
Oh god.
They were found in the permafrost, so those are from Russia. And as you can see, it has one massive horn on its snout, which is like the Indrik beast, but it also has a smaller horn. So you can often see that with rhinos, that they have actually two horns. They have a smaller one a bit further towards the forehead. And people think that this may be the reason why it was described as an animal that could have one horn or two horns. And interestingly, um, animals like mammoths and woolly rhinos, they're most closely related to animals from India or Southeast Asia, and not to African animals. The Indrik beast is mentioned in the Dove book, which is a book of Russian folk tales, and it's described as the king of all animals. They say it lives on the holy mountain, and when it moves, the earth shakes, which is probably realistic for something like a woolly rhino or even an Indricotherium. The word Indrik is a mispronunciation of Jedinarok, and Jedinarok means unicorn in Russian.
That's a really pretty word.
Yes, it's nice. See, Russian doesn't sound scary when you can actually speak it.
Was that a shot at Luther?
Like,
Yeah, I practiced that, but I quit because all the Russians were laughing at me because they said they'd never heard Russian spoken with a southern accent. And so they every time I'd say something in Russian, they'd start laughing, and it made me feel very insecure, so I quit.
yes, I think it's a problem with Russian and German because you typically only hear those languages in movies. And people are usually shouting and they're being aggressive when they're speaking those languages. And very often they're Hollywood actors who don't understand what they're saying, who just want to sound aggressive. So everyone thinks that these languages are very aggressive, but that's not the case. Russian is actually a very poetic language. They have many pictures in their language and they keep quoting songs and TV shows and so on. So you could get through Russian by just learning some TV show quotes by heart. Okay, yeah, you've solved the Indrik beast. What more can I say?
Hey, point for us.
Yay!
Thank you so much to my YouTube members and Patreon members for all the love and support. It's thanks to people like you that we can keep growing.